farming really started to boom heavily in 1800s when options and futures were invented, because suddenly you had stability. People could predict what the prices are. They could lock up the prices ahead of time. They could make investments and take out loans against those things. And this was made possible by the financial industry.
Welcome to Better Worlds, where we explore how Web 3.0 connects our natural, manufactured, and virtual realities to create better lives for all in a more equitable and sustainable way.
Welcome to this episode of Better Worlds. Here today with me is Stenver Jerkku, also known as Stenver from Denver. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, Julian. Thank you for inviting.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear about your, impact-focused investments on carbon markets, your creations in the DAO space and the crypto space. Let's begin with the place you're at. You are in Estonia, right? One of those, hotspots for anything cryptocurrency and Web3. Do you mind explaining to people that don't know about this yet why that is so, and why it is such a beautiful space to really create, and where the community can be much more successful than in other places?
Yeah, well, Estonia is very cold, right? And we have very long and dark nights. So there's not much to do in here. So what do? You then start companies and start building stuff online. So we've kind of been super successful at that. That's one story why it's like that. The other story is that Estonia is also the birthplace of Skype. I don't know if most people know that. So Skype was initially created by Estonians. It was done by serial tech entrepreneurs. They had already a few other apps behind them, like some FTP file sharing apps and things like that. And when Skype was sold to Microsoft, twice actually, I don't know if many people know that story, but initially Skype was bought by Microsoft. Then they discovered that they didn't buy the IP and they bought it again. So it was kind of a funny story. The community that came out from Skype, the people who worked at Skype, they were super supportive of community. And I think that's what really differentiates Estonia, is that all the founders and entrepreneurs in Estonia, they're like very tight-knit groups. They help each other, they support each other, and the Skype founders and early employees immediately started raising the next generation of founders. And the next generation of founders also, were raised and made successful with this community feeling. So they started creating the next generation of founders. So now we reached the point where Estonia is, raising the most capital per capita in the world. We have the most unicorns per capita in the world. It truly is like a Silicon Valley of Europe. The biggest issue with Estonia when it comes to tech companies is that we don't have people. There's 1.3 million people living in entire Estonia. Our capital has 400,000 people. That's smaller than some villages in Germany, right? So we're actually very much talent starved in here. So when you start a company in Estonia, you immediately got to think global. That's your only chance to make it, which is both good and bad. But it definitely is one of the big reasons. There's many other reasons as well, but I won't get into every single thing.
Yeah, no, this is already a great start. And you mentioned it, there's the community aspect of it, right? There's the Estonian Founders Society that kind of continues to just nourish talent and keeps kind of passing the torch in that way. You also work with another community an investment community called Top Tier Impact that is really focused on connecting impact-focused investors with entrepreneurs. And I'd be happy to hear a little bit more about your work with Top Tier and how that influences the space you're in right now.
Yeah, so Top Tier Impact is a global community of entrepreneurs, founders, and investors who want to focus on impact, climate impact and all the other impact as well. And what I found when I was invited there by one of my investors, Draft VC, David Rodriguez, absolutely amazing guys. If you ever manage to get them on your cap table, then you've done a really good job. They're super hands-on. And I was invited by him, but the people I met there, a lot of the people I already knew are really serious players in the impact space, and then I met a lot of new people as well. So I've been to a few dinners and things, and I mean, at the end of the day, it's about community, right? So you go there, you meet people, you build your network, and later on, when the right opportunity comes, you can leverage each other's help. That's how it works. There's actually really good research being done every year. It's like a global startup research that's being done every year, and they analyze like what makes startup founders successful. Because it's so hard to predict like who are the successful founders and who are not. And one clear differentiator between unicorn founders and not unicorn founders is the connections to other founders. So that's why I think it's so important to be in a lot of these communities and build these connections, because the connections to other founders is that's where you can start getting your first big clients. That's where you can start finding the right investors. That's where you can get feedback from people who already have experience in the industry. It makes a lot of sense, actually.
It does make a lot of sense, right? You need not just good ideas, but also be connected to the right people, and also spread the message and hear what people have to say about how it actually lands in reality, no?
Correct. Completely correct. So that's why I think all these communities like Top Tier, Impact, Refi DAO, etc., they're incredibly important.
So you're right now working on Solid World DAO, but before that you founded Handyman and Click. Could you share with us of each of them, what the lessons were you learned, and, what kind of path you had to go through founding them and being on your journey?
Yeah, so I'll just go back in time step by step. Before Solid World DAO, I worked on e-agronom. So e-agronom manages farmers across Central Eastern Europe. We managed 1 million hectares of farmers, that's 2.4 million acres, and we turned farmers into carbon farmers. E-agronom, I founded it and built it and worked in there for 6 years before we started Solid World DAO as like a project inside e-agronom. At one point, I went to the board and said that if we want to make Solid World DAO potential, maximize the potential, we need to spin it out, because those two entities have conflicts of interest and can't really work well together. And then we negotiated a deal, and I bought out the DAO from e-agronom and now gave those tokens back to the community, and now it's independent DAO. In e-agronom, what did I learn? It's a limitless list. Truly unlimited amount of stuff. I guess the biggest lessons, let's start with scope. When you're doing a company, you keep stumbling upon opportunities day after day after day. But you will also discover that you got to find what do you want to be the world's best at. And you need to focus on that, laser focus on this one thing that you're world's best at. Like, even if you're solving only like one tiny problem, by really focusing all your efforts only on that single thing, you can find 10 ways to present it and package it and try to target the right people. You'll find ways how to build it better as a product. You'll find ways how to do it with less people and having more impact and more bang for your buck. So that was my main lesson from e-agronom. You got to focus. You got to forget about other things. You got to work with other people who will cover the rest of the ecosystem. And if you build a product that tries to do everything, then you won't do anything the best. So find out what you're the best at and keep doing that the best. So I think that was the number one learning point. Although
That's a huge takeaway. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of first-time founders I see, they basically say we're gonna do the entire industry. Well, that usually doesn't work out. You often discover that even like one subset of problem can be so hard that you need to basically focus all your efforts on that, and it might actually turn out to be bigger business than trying to take out your whole industry. I think Lean Startup by Eric Schmidt also talked about it really well. Just find your D-Day landing, take it on, become a monopoly in that one thing, and then start thinking about expanding your reach. So yeah, there's many other lessons as well. Before eAgronom, I worked in Glia, which is a New York-based startup. I was 7th employee there, a tech lead. When I left, it was post Series B. Now it's a unicorn based in New York. Glia, because it was such an early stage startup and I was there for the whole growth cycle. I just learned not only the technical aspects, I was a software dev, tech lead, but also I grew professionally, business-wise, and I basically became to understand how does the entire startup cycle and work, how the companies change as they become more successful. And I guess one of the really, really big things is that that I learned from there is that you gotta be very, very honest with your employees. You gotta basically trust them, give them the entire context. And if they can't handle the context, then maybe they don't belong in the company. And but instead of trying to hold back information and giving them what is, like a military term is that need to know. So it's better to, because oftentimes you don't even know what they need to know. So it's better to really give them everything they need to know about this task at hand, and trust them that they do their best job. So that's really my approach when
there's trust in the core of how you operate it. That's kind of refreshing to hear, to be honest.
Yeah, it's I love working with people who are independent, take initiative, and if they have the right context, then they can figure it out. I think those are the best types of people to work, like A players, right? And like B and C players who really need like exact plan and every task defined for them, it's just not my style at all. And before Glia, I worked on Handyman and a couple of other companies. I built space satellites. I got into blockchain in 2013. I guess one of the big lessons as well is hire slow, fire fast. So I think that's very important as a founder. Take your time hiring, even if it feels like you need this position filled yesterday. It's better to wait until a perfect candidate comes along and test them properly than just hiring the first one that comes and then needing to fire them, because you'll just waste a lot of time on the bad person and then discover he brought no value, and you actually spent more time and the resources than just waiting and looking for the exactly perfect guy.
Awesome. Well, thank you for giving us a bit of an overview of the different stations you went through on your journey so far, and the learnings in those different projects. You already talked about eAgronom a little bit. I'd love to understand, because you said, so basically, you created the AI agronomy team within eAgronom, and then it had to split. And out of that, I understand you now started Solid World DAO. Is that right?
Not quite. So AI agronomy was another project inside the agronomy. So AI agronomy was basically, we hired some world-class agri-business consultants, and then we basically built this consulting with the farmers, and then we wanted to mimic their consulting with AI tooling that we built and to automate some of the advice these consultants were giving. So one of the things we built was, for example, automatic crop rotation planner. So crop rotation planning is, it might seem simple. You just do, wheat, oats, legumes, potato, wheat. It might seem simple. It's actually incredibly difficult problem. And the different combinations, if you have like, I don't know, hundreds of fields, the different combinations of crops you can do over 5 years is more than the atoms in the universe. So it's really an exponential problem that goes on in there, and figuring out like the best way to do it, and also complying with all the laws and regulations and being applicable for all the subsidies is very, very hard problem. So we worked out a tool that tried to find the best path for that, basically, and minimize compliance violations. You'd be surprised, but it's actually literally impossible to 100% avoid compliance violations.
I'm curious why you ended up deciding to make Solid World a DAO. That would be interesting to understand for us.
I'm sorry, I need to adjust the last statement. It's not impossible to avoid compliance violations, impossible to avoid compliance violations and use the perfect set of agronomical practices at the same time. So you got to choose one or the other. Usually people decide to lower the agronomical practices level. Solid World DAO. So in Solid World DAO, so we NIAGNOM, we went to farmers and we told them that, hey, why don't you become environmentally friendly? Just work for up to 5 years. Then you can use environmentally friendly methods while you're doing it. And in 5 years, you can issue Verra certified carbon credits for soil carbon, and then you can get paid. Because that's what we did. We helped them to become carbon farmers. But that pitch was absolutely horrible, right? Nobody wants to work for 5 years before they get paid. So Solid World DAO was born in NIAGNOM to solve that problem. How do we get financing for farmers day one instead of in 5 years to the future? And turned out there's already a solution out there. So there's carbon trading houses, family offices, hedge funds who do these things called forward purchases. Forward investments. They invest into these carbon assets ahead of time at a discount, and they sell them away for a spread up to 5 years later when the underlying credits get delivered. The issue is that these forward deals are completely OTC. There's no price signals out there. It's very untransparent market. It's very predatory towards new players. I spoke with UK farmer who proudly told me he got 80 cents per tree. When I ran the numbers for him, I was like, brother, you got £5 per CO2 ton. These credits were sold off for like 20 to 30 few months later. You got ripped off. And that's endemic in the industry for the farmers. And not only farmers, but anybody who tries to do carbon projects. And if they haven't been there for a while, they don't know how much they're worth. And even if they have, like all the price signals, there's huge information asymmetries over there. And at the same time, from the investor side, it's not like it's shiny and all good in there. Investors, there's companies and corporates who want to do carbon investments and these sustainable investments. And they hire entire sustainability departments. Not the one person, but like entire departments to source for these carbon projects, try to find the quality ones. There's a lot of noise, a lot of random things over there. And they are really going out there and trying to find projects to invest in. And when they do an investment, they're taking on direct exposure from a single project. And 90% of the projects overpromise and underdeliver. So it's like, very dangerous thing to do, right? It's risky. If the project fails or overpromises, you lose out on your capital. And at the same time, it's very illiquid for up to 5 years. If you want to get rid of your position, you need to go out there and start doing OTC sales. Find buyers. It's like really bartering economy. There's no advanced financial instruments. So Solid World DAO was created to disrupt all of that. And we have essentially created sort of like this index fund-like carbon financing pools where you can have diversified position as an investor to a carbon credit asset class like mangroves. And it's diversified, it's de-risk, very risk adjusted, and at the same time, every underlying asset has guaranteed delivery because we only work with institutional partners. You either they guarantee delivery through replacement credits or using insurance. While at the same time for the suppliers, it creates public transparent price signals for their forwards. So every single second they know how much their forwards are valued at, and they have a guaranteed buyer at that price, any single second. So that's basically why we did that and how we're planning to solve it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So I understand that you partnered also with some of the leading crypto companies in the space, right? Like Toucan, Flow Carbon, OFP, and others. Can you share with us how you work with them and why you believe that your approach has advantages over others in the market?
Yeah, so as far as we know, we're the only ones doing liquid forward investment pools that give this sort of diversified position for the investor. So if you know Toucan, they created the world's most successful on-chain liquid spot carbon pools called PCT and also NCT. You can think of us and Toucan as yin and yang. Toucan created the spot pools that are liquid. We are creating the forward pools that are liquid. And but forwards requires really specialized approach. There's a lot of things you need to understand when doing forwards to mitigate the delivery risks, mitigate the selection of projects, and working with the right institutional suppliers. It's more specialized approach than doing spot. So I think that's the reason why we're perfect for the forwards as well, because we have this forwards background through the e-agronom exposure. Our founding team, both me and Res, in e-agronom, we dealt a lot with forwards. And Toucan, at the same time, works on the spot. So they're incredibly important to make this entire thing actually tick, because you need the demand down the line. Without demand, you have no forwards, right? Because somebody needs to buy them at the end of the pipeline. So Toucan and us are really meant to be together, and they were super inspirational and educational for us how to even make this entire thing work. Without Toucan, we wouldn't exist basically. And they also, with all their experience with what happened last winter, the speculation bubble, the assets that were of dubious quality that entered in the pool, it was very educational to us. And we're very thankful for that it happened. We've been telling that to Rafael and all the other Toucans many times, because it basically allowed us to learn from the first mover mistakes and help us avoid doing these mistakes. But yeah, since they're in spot, we're in forwards, then we're not competitive at all. And in general, I think refi is more about collaboration than competition. Flow Carbon, they're doing similar thing as Toucan, but the two-way bridge, plus they are doing direct forward financing. So they're actually very interested in using our liquid pools to essentially rotate the supply faster so they can more scalably finance new projects. Feel free to ask about any other of these companies. But in summary, we see ourselves as the hard liquidity of the forward market in the future. It's going to be like the central liquidity pool for, let's say, I don't know, cook stoves, ARR, mangroves, so on and so forth. And other players can tap into that and build derivatives on it, like options and futures. We're in talks with Neutral about that and many other players. Or they can build marketplaces on that. So Tallow, for example, can tap into that to have a guaranteed buyer and seller at a certain price and guaranteed supply. And so it's really a financial primitive, a money leg on top of which you can build a lot of other things.
Yeah, this is an exciting market in many perspectives, right? And so I'd love to understand, in your own words, how do you personally think we can continue to verify that, carbon markets and carbon trading also really relate to real world impact and doesn't just turn into another bubble of greenwashing?
Yeah, I think that we need to trust existing centralized players a lot. That's my belief. We need to work with them. We need to understand where they are coming from. A lot of their concerns and complaints are very, very justified and come from previous experience. One of the big fears of both Gold Standard and Verra, for example, is that in around 2010 and so, carbon credits were sold to pensioners as the next big thing that will make them ultra rich. This brings a lot of bad spotlight to the industry. They want to avoid that, and they want to make sure that crypto doesn't open door to another types of these bad actors taking advantage of assets people don't understand. And I respect that a lot. They have a lot of experience in the space. They, especially Gold Standard, really understands the blockchain. They see the value of the blockchain. They just want to make sure it can't be used for bad. And blockchain, it's sort of a wild west. So it's up to the creators, the builders, to work with people who have seen it and understand like how to build the products in a way that it can't be used for bad purposes or dubious reasons. So to answer your question, Verra and Gold Standard, they were the pioneers of this industry. They created the first standards. Pioneers always make the first mistakes. It's just, you don't know, you don't have the information. There's so many unknowns. But they were the first and bravest ones that did it. They have learned from their mistakes. They have fixed it. There's still some journalists who dig up like crap from 2008. And it's like, this was the past. Like, why are we stuck in there? Let's figure out how to fix issues and move forward. And they've done it. So now they just want to make sure that as the new generation of pioneers come, they don't start repeating the old mistakes. And we should respect that and work with them on that.
Yeah, thanks for your answer, Stenver. I'm curious, I want to come full circle here. You said earlier that when you really want to excel and become one of those founders that can continue to repeat a success after success, and you said focusing on one thing and really getting clear and good at that. So in your own words, what's your personal version of that? What's the one thing that Stenver is just extraordinary good at?
Liquidity, finding liquidity for our liquidity pools. That's the job of Solid World. That's the job of me. For the next 10 decades or 10 years, I will just work on finding more liquidity to the pools. And that's me personally. And my team will basically work on validating the quality of the pools and make sure that these pools are, very good and safe and risk-adjusted places to hold your capital. And at the same time, this will also, what we've essentially built is financial primitive. I already talked about all the derivatives and stuff, but it really is a general purpose supply chain finance protocol. It's not carbon specific, it's forward financing specific. So we're starting with carbon because these guys really need it. It's super fast growing. It's climate focused. And it's also unregulated, which is, provides a lot of opportunities to get it moving faster. But after carbon, we will move to other asset classes, circular economy, renewable energy, RECs, ITMOS, and also into regulated commodities. We want to become basically the players who bring all the forwards on chain and then, start bringing these real world use cases on chain.
Right on. I'd love to, ask another tiny bit more personal question in the context. So maybe you have a story about one of the most surprising challenges you've had to overcome in working with impact-focused organizations.
I think the biggest surprising challenge is the lack of, I don't want to say, basically the fact that, how to put it in a politically correct way, lack of experienced people who understand specifically what we are doing. A lot of, like, this space is very inspiring, and a lot of people, especially in light of climate change being a danger and threat to us all, it's attracting a lot of very, very good talent that are very smart people, but they don't understand the carbon industry. And the internet and the information in the carbon industry, to say it like bluntly, is bad. It's very incomplete. There's a lot of players out there who take a lot of advantage on the fact that the carbon industry is currently so untransparent. That's what we want to change. But there's still a lot more change even after our change. We're only handling one part, which is the forward financing part. And this creates a dynamic where a lot of bad information is floating around. One of the biggest
give us an
lie.
example, like a thing you'd like to clean up if you could, just with this little interview here.
Absolutely. The biggest lie that's being parroted in carbon industry all the time is that we need to get money directly from from corporate buyers to suppliers. And it should be as direct as possible with no middlemen. That is, I think, one of the worst takes that we keep hearing all the time, because it essentially means that we shouldn't have any advanced financial instruments. We should just be a barter economy. And in fact, that's actually what's going on to an extent already. So I think it's the opposite. We should make the industry and financing as transparent as possible. So anybody that's in the middle, the guys in the middle play a very specific role. They take on a risk. They're putting their capital first. And they're doing something called price discovery, which a lot of people underestimate. But farming really started to boom heavily in 1800s when options and futures were invented, because suddenly you had stability. People could predict what the prices are. They could lock up the prices ahead of time. They could make investments and take out loans against those things. And this was made possible by the financial industry. So if we say that we want to get capital directly from corporates to suppliers, then we're literally saying we shouldn't have financial industry. so that's something that's very close to us. We see the opposite. We should get as many advanced financial instruments here as possible. But the change we need to make is make sure they're on the blockchain, so they're fully transparent. Anybody can see exactly at any time how much value was transferred, who owns the value, where does the money come, where does it go, how do the credits move. And basically, by having this transparency, we'll have certainty and we'll remove a lot of the monkey business that's going on. So that's, I think, one of the takes that I hear people talking all the time, and I don't think they're really thinking this through.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and for all of the answers and insights. I have a last question for you, Stenver, and that's targeted towards your advice for younger generations that are kind of leaning into blockchain technologies, that are leaning into any kind of impact-driven business. You've been in the blockchain space for, I think, almost a decade now, you said. So, what advice would you give to younger generations that are kind of moving in at this point?
Yeah. You might be surprised, but I think one of the big advices is actually take care of your loved ones while you're doing it. Don't forget them. My wife has been super supportive for me along this journey. She's helped me, overcome the good, the bad, and sometimes being in the blockchain, especially since it's like open 24/7, fast moving, you sometimes like forget everything that's around you. But you shouldn't do that, because these are the people that can actually help you through the hard times. So yeah, at the end of the day, that's what matters.
Right on. I love that answer with heart. Stenver, thank you so much for your time and for your work in the world and for this interview.
Thank you, Julian. It was a pleasure.